and gone. Them a the first one out on the dam. Basket on she head, bucket in each hand, hold up on she frack, I wanna she grandson. To the market, them a go. For the morning, the day is dawning. For Catacrow to give the villagers a warning. Rise and shine, the birds them a sing. All animal take turn as them join in the waking. Catacrow, Dagaba, donkey, bray, horse, and they even duck a quack. Catacrow, Dagaba, donkey, bray, horse, and they even duck a quack. Come and hear this sweet story that tell the people about life in the country. All day a pack down, me now a come home.
All right, pleasant good evening, and welcome to Anansi Web Education. My name is Mark Penshop, and we are preparing. We're going to rock and roll this morning, but as oftentimes I'm corrected, we're Guyana. We shouldn't be saying rock and roll. We should be saying let's get ready to reggae on today's program, which we'll be dealing with it's all about food and cost of living and all manner of things we will be talking about. No stranger to you is David Arthur Granger, former president of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. And during those years in office, we know there was hardly any issue with cost of living and food prices gone up and all manner of things. People seem to have been so happy in the country compared to what we're hearing now. Throughout the country, people are complaining. And while we might make a little bit of, put a little bit of smile or see this as a bit of humor, it is some truth to it. What the ordinary folks, how they are thinking, some truth to this. And I want to play this quick clip before we get into today's program.
Oh, Jesus Christ, if cost of living double, I don't know what happened. A pound of sugar is $300 already. Flour, everything gone up. Everything just raising. You gotta get about $40,000 for buy good ration. You gotta get 3 man now. A weekend man, a monthly man, and a fortnight man.
Good night, Mr. Granger. How are you, sir?
Thank you for showing the clip. I have been much educated because what you showed there was the voice of an ordinary woman. She's not a big shot. She is an ordinary woman who has to find money to put food on the table for her children. And she's making it sound funny, but she's deadly serious. I'm feeling more educated and more entertained by that clip. Thank you very much. I'm okay otherwise.
Yeah, welcome indeed. And as we move into today's program, Guyana's economy has been described as one of the fastest growing in the hemisphere. About 48.4% of the Guyanese, however, have been described as living in, and this is very important, guys, 48.4% of Guyanese, however, have been described as living in poverty. In addition, the high cost of the everyday foods. You just heard that lady. She's talking about cost of living, and she is basically standing up and representing hundreds of thousands of Guyanese who are feeling the squeeze right now. The high cost of everyday foods for families are rising. Let's take, for example, cassava. Now, many of us who planted cassava back in the days, we know we just run in the backyard, pick our cassava. Cassava now is $460 a pound. Fish, we just go in a trench or we get a cast net. It's $500 per pound. Plantains gone up. Sweet potato gone up. It is estimated that it would cost a 5-member. And again, guys, for those of you who are now joining us, good evening, and listen to this part here. It is estimated that it would cost a 5-member family about 180,000 Guyana dollars to purchase sufficient food and pay for other monthly expenses. But a public sector worker's minimum wage is about $76,000. $76,000. And lots of attention was actually paid on public servants and their wages under the coalition government. So we give kudos to the coalition for addressing this issue. We can't say the same right now. Mr. Granger, this takes us to our first question. What has been responsible for the rising cost of living over the past 3 years, not 3 decades, but over the past 3 years? It has gone sky high. What's the cause?
Thank you for that question, Mark. We can start by saying that the coronavirus pandemic was a contributory factor, but that's finished now. But the crisis goes on. When we became a republic and we launched our program for feed, clothe, and house, so people ridiculed the program. Instead of producing more food, and we had a coin, the coffee dollar it was called then, 53 years ago, and it celebrated food for all. Food was a focus under the PNC government, 53 years ago. And a dollar was worth a dollar. A dollar was worth a dollar. You could go to the market with one of those coffee dollars.
Yeah,
But right
let
now,
me just pause you. Let me just pause you there for a moment for this, especially for the younger generation who have probably never seen this here at all. This coffee dollar. What was the excitement back then about this coffee dollar?
one, it recognized our national hero, Coffee, who is regarded as the leader of the 1763 revolt in Berbice. But it also represented the program of the administration, the development program of the administration, which focused on feeding, clothing, and housing Guyanese. And this coin was symbolic of that program. There was actual development plan, and that coin was symbolic, and it was real currency. You could actually go to the market and spend this money. Of course, people save it, as a keepsake, and when a child was born, it give them it's still called a coffee dollar, but it was a symbol of what we aimed at and what perhaps could have been achieved if we had achieved a greater degree of social cohesion over the last 53 years. But the PPP are bent on destroying everything that the PNC did, disparaging everything that the PNC said. So rather than getting collective energy, it was a fragmented, and we never really achieved the targets simply because the PPP disagreed and they just sabotaged the program. So it was a symbol of what could have been done. All this talk about, one Guyana and so on, that's where it started. We were always one nation, one people, one destiny, but the PPP decided that it's only one nation as long as they wanted it to be one nation under the PPP. But it was a good initiative, and the APN UFC recaptured that spirit.
Absolutely, and I'm sorry I interrupted you there when you were speaking about what is responsible for the rising cost of living over the past 3 years.
Well, over the past 3 years, nearly 40 months, the PPP has been in office, and they took pride in disparaging and damaging and destroying many of the programs that the PNC the APNU AFC had introduced. So part of it is attitudinal. They rejected a lot of the APNU projects, and they embarked on what they call vanity projects, going after roses and hemp. I don't know how many Guyanese are hankering for hemp and hankering for roses and soya and wheat. We'll never, in my lifetime or yours, become a successful wheat growing country. There is in economics something called comparative advantage, and we have an advantage in rice production. Let us exploit that advantage and produce cheaper rice, cheaper cassavas, cheaper sweet potatoes, cheaper tomatoes. But going after hemp and wheat is not the way to deal with the food problem. People don't want to go for cheap wheat and cheap hemp now, and we never produce cheap enough wheat to satisfy our people. So what is responsible is the PPP's misguided policies. They are going for vanity projects, and they're not paying attention to basic food items. And every day, Guyanese want basic food. They want vegetables, they want fruit, and they want some meat. And these are the things that we must focus on. And I'm not seeing that happening. There's far too little focus on food production. And we've had a lot of conferences, but we're not having a lot of food production in Guyana over these last 40 months.
Not a lot indeed. And this takes us to my next question here. Good evening to those who now join us. This is Awi, Anansi Web Education, and with me is no stranger, David Arthur Granger, former president of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana and former leader of the opposition and former leader of the People's National Congress Reform. And this takes us now to our second question. Why has the PBPC administration failed to lower the cost of living over the past 3 years?
I do not think that the PPP itself is people-minded. They're concerned about power and they're concerned with profit. Even if you look at the environment, it's all about profit. It's all about money. Yeah, money is important, but money for what? It is to provide people, or should be to provide people with a good life. Um, so bringing down the cost of living has never been an objective of the PPP, or else they aim at food. They aim at ensuring that the country as a whole could have a well-fed population, but that has not been the focus. And as a result of that misplaced attention, they're pouring billions of dollars into the sugar industry, which is dying. And I think, if you examine it carefully, you'd realize that the APNU-AFC coalition tried to rationalize, not destroy, rationalize. Because when you look at what happened to East Demerara estates, Diamond and Luzignan and so on, this was the PPP. They damaged it because they knew it couldn't. The production of sugar couldn't survive, and they migrated sugar to East Berbice. When we have that colossal catastrophe at Skeldon, that is what the PPP was up to. But they tried to blame the APNU, and we were trying to right size the sugar industry, and they avoided doing it. Look at Wales. Wales can't be salvaged. You're just pumping money into a dying enterprise. So when you look at the PPP food policy as a whole, it was not grounded in reality. CARICOM over the decades, over 3 decades, has generated well-researched, informative plans and programs. But we are not seeing that emphasis on the PPP side, that they're making use of all of this advice. So the rising cost of living, the rising cost of food particularly, has been really the product of political mismanagement and poor decision making on the part of the PPP. What needs to happen if you're going to put cheap food on the table, is that we need to produce the commodities which people need to eat every day, and we need to ensure that even if we're giving out hampers, those hampers have products which are generated from farms in Guyana. And this could help us to bring down the cost of food. But this is not happening. And as a result of that, sometimes you go to one of these food fairs and you're buying Brazilian tomatoes and you're buying imported cabbages. Sometimes the packing cases are there to see. They're all written in Spanish or Portuguese. Now, my friends, the CARICOM arrangement divides up the responsibilities among the heads of government or heads of state. Um, and maybe one was responsible for business and tourism, another is responsible for security. But Guyana is responsible for agriculture. So it's a double responsibility. It is not just a responsibility to Guyanese consumers to put cheap food on the table. It is a responsibility to the entire Caribbean, the entire Anglophone, well, the CARICOM states. So we are not just letting our own people down, we're letting the region down by not having a coherent and a comprehensive agriculture policy. That is a big problem because, it's not a matter of just making declarations here. It means that the Guyanese Public Service, together with the Caribbean Community Secretary, which has done a lot of the spade work, needs to know exactly what is happening in the Bahamas, in Belize, in Barbados, throughout the Caribbean to improve food production. And we are defaulting, we are denying our own region and our own country the value of that expertise. So what is being responsible rising cause PPP is distracted. They're distracted with a lot of nebulous mega projects. They're going to bring in somebody from Abu Dhabi. They're going to bring in somebody from Dubai. They're going to bring, and the people when they come, they don't see roads. They don't see stellings. They don't see aircraft that can transport food. They don't see storage bonds, and they go back home because they're not going to put down infrastructure which Guyana should have put down for itself. These things don't exist. They don't want to go up the Berbice River in some speedboat and be shown a lot of bush. They want to see a place where they could invest. We don't have a comprehensive national food policy. And that is one of the reasons why the PPP administration has not been able to lower the cost of food, which is essential to lowering the cost of living over the past 40 months. That is the problem. PPP is just, like, excited children get into office and they're spending all around the place. They're building roads and they're growing roses, but they're not paying attention to the people's needs. That is a big problem. They're just misfocused. They're just doing the wrong things.
And wrong things they are. Lots and lots of wrong things under the PPP regime. I agree with you, Mr. Granger. It's like little children. You just get into office, you don't know what to do. You're just spending and spending and spending and spending, and not focusing on what you're spending on or focusing on the interest of the citizens. Wasteful spending, indeed. And also, the other thing that I'd agree with you is you bring investors into the country, you boast and brag that Dubai, people from here, there, they're coming. And when they see what's in the country, whether it's infrastructure, whatever, they're turned off. We don't hear anything thereafter. No investment, nothing. Our third question: where have the high cost of food and the high cost of living had their greatest impact?
Well, I would say the focus has been, or the impact has been felt in the villages. On the coastline, don't forget there are over 200 indigenous villages, and perhaps there's a greater number on the coast. And it's a rural economies, and these should be the places with sufficient food. And the impact has been great there geographically. So the country, and when you bring in 30 or 40,000 migrants from Venezuela, instead of putting them somewhere where they can grow their own food, they are, like cancer spreading all over the country and living on handouts. And the government seems to be on a perpetual campaign. From general election campaign, they've gone into local government campaign. Now they're preparing for a general election campaign in 2025. Yeah, everybody likes a hamper. Everybody likes a handout. But hampers and handouts do not put food on the table in perpetuity. They're short term, and the PPP knows they're short term. And the next flood or the next crisis, they'll come out with more hampers. But what has happened is that this year alone, in 2023, the PPP withdrew $176 billion from our natural resource fund. This is oil money. I, as president in December 2019, announced that Guyana was a petroleum state. And yeah, PPP has been the beneficiary. We never had this sort of money. But where is the money going? Uh, Up to, if you read the newspapers, you'd see that the Auditor General reported that in the case of the Ministry of Public Works alone, they had a huge budget to build roads. But at the end of 2022, 13 billion had to be returned because they don't have the absorptive capacity to use the money. They got more money than they need, but instead of putting the money into food, the money had to be returned to the treasury. So the impact of the high cost of food is being fed in the villages because you're not getting the grassroots development that should take place in the villages. We set up half a dozen different programs to help villagers to produce food, which could go into agro processing. But the PPP cut them off at the ankles. So when you go into these villages now, the food production is being undermined by cheap imports. Chickens are being undermined by foreign imports. Tomatoes being undermined. Mangoes being undermined by mangoes, by apples. And if you look at all of the things that people need, it is cheaper because of the influence of the business community. Some members of the business community, not all members of the business, it's cheaper to import than to grow. Why go to the trouble of running farms when, of course, you can simply bring in a container full of apples, pears, and grapes and undermine local production of sapodillas and mangoes? Why grow sweet potatoes and cassava when you could bring in a container load of carrots and imported potatoes for your fast food outlets? So the PVP doesn't have a people-centered philosophy. It doesn't have a sort of ideology of developing food for all, or developing the country for for the people who need to eat food every day. And many of the people are eating less, or they're eating less good food because of the high cost or the unavailability of food. So, where is the impact being felt? Mostly in rural, coastland, and hinterland villages. And I'm surprised that we don't have a greater degree of hunger because many people are not getting the nutrition they need. And the economy is suffering because of the misguided policies of the PPP. And what we see is that the price of food is going up. It is bound to be more expensive to bring tomatoes from Brazil or to bring cabbage and broccoli from the United States than it is to grow it here. But we're not getting this type of infrastructure to grow food here. We're talking about roses and hemp. And rose and hemp will never feed this country. And I don't know what's going on in the Ministry of Agriculture. My own government had appointed a Minister of Rural Affairs to push local production, to push local agro-processing. And agro-processing is not something for Georgetown or Parika alone. There must be, aligned to the regional system, a method of producing agricultural commodities and storing them in every region. So you go to Lethem, you can find huge warehouses, air-conditioned warehouses, where food from the villages could be stored and near to the airport could be shipped to other parts of the country. We need a system of roadways, we need a system of infrastructure, but we're not seeing the sort of development. We're not seeing the sort of development that the focus is not there because this will provide food security for the villages and to make the villages more independent. Right now, the villages are dependent, so you can come along with some black bags, with some hampers, and everybody is grateful. Oh, thank you, Mr. Minister. Thank you, Mr. Minister. But next year they have to come again because they're not going to be able to produce their own food. So I would say the crisis is countrywide. The crisis is countrywide, and part of it is affected by the migrant overflow. We are not getting a sufficient volume of production. We're hearing a lot of talk about food hubs. We're getting a lot of conferences, but we're not seeing these huge containers of Guyanese products, particularly of food stuff, coming into the villages that I can sit down every day and eat my metem with Guyanese plantain, Guyanese cassava, Guyanese sweet potato, Guyanese edo, Guyanese yam, and Guyanese fish. I mean, I can't enjoy my metem. I love metem, and metem and soup on Sunday. Those are essentials for some Guyanese communities in the rural areas. But I don't want soup with American potatoes. I want soup with Guyanese sweet potatoes, Guyanese edos. That's what I like. And a lot of Guyanese want Guyanese food. And I'm sure that people in the diaspora, people who migrated from Guyana, would yearn for, especially at Christmas time or holiday time, they yearn for Guyanese food. But we're being deprived of that pleasure. I don't know what the next generation will be eating because the way things are going now, people won't even know what a mango or sapodilla or simatu or tamarind. These are becoming foreign products to most of them. When they want chips, potato chips, they're coming from Guatemala. Plantain chips from Guatemala. What's going on? We're not paying attention to the day-to-day food needs of the Guyanese people. And the impact is being felt in country and hinterland, coastland and hinterland.
Thank you so much, President Granger. This takes us to our final question for tonight on AWI, Anansi Web Education. And let us just acknowledge all of you in the audience there again. Good night to all. We deal with this final question. And I know a lot of you are getting a bit hungry, but you're studying what you're going to eat, whether you're going to fry some nice plantains. And we always want, and for those of us who are outside of Guyana, we always want something. People rush down to Linda's restaurant in Brooklyn, or they rush to Sybil's restaurant in Queens because you've got to get something Guyanese. You've got to get that, and we've got to pay attention to that as well, because we want our foods from our country indeed. So the final question, how can food security be attained by involving coastland and hinterland villages?
Well, I think from the point of view of attitude, from the point of view of approach to the problem, any administration has to understand that the country cannot be run by a ministry, in Fort Street, Kingston, or Georgetown. That is why my administration emphasized the regions. We created 4 towns for the first time in the history of Guyana. Bartik is a town, Mabaroom is a town, Madi is a town, Letem is a town. And these towns are centers of regional administration. Even the police, instead of having this big, F division, every region is now a police region. So we emphasize regional development. Similarly, food production has to be based in the regions. We have to empower the regions, whether the regional chairman is PPP or APNU or whatever. We have to make those regions more autonomous in terms of decision making and stop trying to micromanage everything from Fort Street, Kingston. So how can food security be attained? One, we have to empower the regions. And the regions have to empower the neighborhoods. So if within a region, if it's region 6 or region 8 or region 9, find out what the region is capable of producing, what the neighborhood is capable of producing in terms of food, and provide the resources that are needed. For example, I'm aware that in region 8, the Potaro Siparun, you can get the best tomatoes and the best potatoes, if you want to call it white potatoes or whatever it is, the best sweet potatoes. And of course, they produce the best ganja, but I'm not going to go there. But if you want to produce food in Guyana, let us find out what are the advantages. Rupununi may be able to produce the best peanuts. Potaro Siparuni could produce the best tomatoes, and so on. But taken as a whole, we can produce all the food Guyana needs, but we need an infrastructure system. We need roads. It is no point plastering and replastering every road in Blackbush Polar and every road in Quarantine. We need to get new roads in all four of those hinterland regions. Barima Waini in the northwest, so-called, Pataro Siparuni, in Region 8, Kuyuni Mazruni, Region 7, and Rupanuni in Region 9. We need infrastructure, we need roads, we need warehouses, we need shipping, we need aerodromes, we need, refrigeration, so that when the farmers produce, they can bring these commodities to be stored or transported. We could become food secure. We started off in 1970, food for all, and we need to move forward. But right now, the PPP's attitude is to stamp on everything that the APNU tried to create. So although we had a regional agricultural and commercial exhibition, when last did we hear about that? Every year, the region would bring farmers, bring processors together. And the regional chairman, even PPP chairman, some of them, not all of them, some of them cooperated. And people would admit they got a boost by producing. I've seen in Region 9, for example, housewives from Yupakari, housewives from Karasabai, housewives from Anai, bringing their kasri, bringing their pepper sauce, to a market, because that was the RACE, the Regional Agriculture Commercial Exhibition. It worked, but the PPP didn't invent it, so they destroyed it. We've had things like the PARD, PARD planning, plans of regional agriculture development, or regional plans of action for regional development. That's agriculture. But every regional chairman had the option of deciding, or with his council, what is best for the region. We've had things like REAP, regional agriculture producers, during the COVID crisis, so that people produce food which is processed. And rather than handing out black bags with foreign stuff, we handed out food that was produced in Guyana. So every one of our programs, the PPP halted and paralyzed because they wanted to put their stamp on development. They want a minister to come along with a canter full of black bags and say, thank you, Mr. Minister. And the result is that people who can get free food, in hampers, just stopped producing, because the food that was coming free was undermining the food that they had to work for. So the PPP's attitude has been very destructive, and we could get back on track in the coastland and in the hinterland if we followed the practices of having production at grassroots level. That is where food is grown. Food is not grown by foreign investors in this country. The days of sugar are over. Food is grown by villages, and we need to put faith in villages, at neighborhood level, village level, community level, regional level, and get food production going again. But the people are too blind to have faith in the ordinary villagers, because they can't control it. When villages become prosperous, PPP can't control it. And PPP always wants to control. You could always control the hampers, but you can't control free people, free villages. That's a big problem with the PPP. And that's what is leading us into perdition, leading us into difficult times. So yes, I believe that we could become food secure, but the PPP have to learn to place faith in the people, provide the resources there. What is the point of drawing $173 billion, from the Natural Resources Fund, and not spending it on food production? What is the point of handing back $13 billion to the Treasury and not being able to provide food for the people? I'm not telling you buying food from overseas, putting food in the ground in Ithaca and in Philippines, in Amstel, Port Moran, wherever it is. We have enough land. We don't have to bring in the foreigners. We don't have to bring in Abu Dhabi and Dubai to grow food for us. We have the expertise, we have the information, we have the the experience, we have the advice from CARICOM Secretariat. Let us use what we have and stop being so blind and prejudiced. Let us feed our people. That should be the priority.
Absolutely. Feeding our people should be the priority. Again, unfortunately, that seemed not to be the priority of those folks at Chandrapal Drive and at Rob Street. Mr. Granger, we've covered these four questions. What has been responsible for the rising cost of living over the past 3 years? The second question, why has the PVPC administration failed to lower the cost of living over the past 3 years? And the next question dealt with, where have the high cost of food and the high cost of living had their greatest impact, which we touched on. And finally, the question, which was just touched on there by President Granger, is how can food security be attained by involving coastland and hinterland villages? Walking into those villages and giving them hampers wouldn't solve the problem at all. Something the PPPC administration should take or be cognizant of. Finally, before we go, Mr. Granger showed off his coins back in his time. Now I have to show off my coins back in my time. There was the cent, there was the 5 cent, there was the 10 cent, 25 cents, as we call it, bob, and the 50 cents. We, as little kids, well, back in my time, we used to be excited just to get one of these 50 cent coin. And the bob, and this brings back a lot of memories because this was a lot of money back in my time to go to school with. 25 cents, as we call it back then, a bob. You could buy a lot of sweetie, bullseye, sugar cake, tamrambal, mitai. I don't know, it's brought back so much memories right now. I'm thinking that I just want to go way back in those days when just this amount of money could buy a heck of a lot of candy, lots and lots of sweet, and plus get change for the next day as well. Before we go, though, your memories of these coins.
Well, as I said, Mark, it's not just nostalgia. We were living in a real world then, a world in which the government focused on people and focused on food production, focused on cost of living, and money had value. In those days, I remember the coins as well. And, to get a 50 cent piece, you didn't even want to break it. But you could not eat 50 cents worth of mangoes or guineas. In those days, you get sick. I mean, it's so much. But now you're paying, $500 for a good sized mango, or for $1,000 for a kilogram, 2 pounds of mangoes. You can see that it is quite likely that many children will not enjoy that cheap food, even though you might have spent it on candy and fruit. I don't think you could have gone to any primary school without eating a mango or a sugar cake made from, of course, local mangoes or local coconuts and so on. But now things are different. People want fast foods, and it is quite clear that cheap fast foods have been undermining the products that you were able to buy with those Guyanese coins a few short years ago when you were at school, 20, 25 years ago when you were a school child.
25 cents, bullseye, mitai, sugar cake. Wow, 25 cents. Those days are long gone. I remember the days you just go in your backyard, you pull out some cassava, you plant some cassava. I used to love planting cassava. You take the cutlass, you put it down slightly. Of course, you level the soil, you put your cutlass down, you push your cassava stick, and there's a way that you got to cut it. I could have been a good farmer, You can't cut it like straight. I mean, it doesn't hurt if you cut it straight, but you just got to slant your cutlass, cut it, and make sure then that the little piece is above, but an inch is above the ground. And then you go on and you plant your borer up. You get your borer seed and you take your cutlass. Of course, you put it on slightly. You don't want to put it like 5, 6, 10 inches underneath the ground. You just a little half inch so that it could just come out back And you don't want to just put it just on the top, because when you're watering it, the seed might just go off somewhere else in whatever. So,
But what
my
you're
God,
saying there is that even as an ordinary villager, you were involved in kitchen gardens or some form of farming. So your own household, when you run out of shallot or celery or cassava, you could just run
right
in the
there in the
backyard.
backyard.
If you want some eggs, you just run in the backyard and get you had a fowl pen. But
Yep. Or
we
at a
seem
certain
to.
time, we were
Mm.
scientists as little boys in the villages. You know that the fowls are about to lay eggs. You're peeping them. And as soon as the eggs drop, you're gone with it, because you got to hurry up and pick up those 5 eggs or something, because if you don't, you know what happened? Mongoose gone with it. Or you got to be smarter than the mongoose and set traps now for them. So as little boys, we were busy, man. Busy all over.
With food.
Planting. Yep. Shallot,
Busy with food.
mangoes, you name it. Except Belanje, though. I mean, I mean, thank you so much, though, for your time. And again, thanks to all of our listeners right here on AWI, Anansi Web Education. And we started off with this, and we'll leave you guys with this, because people throughout the country, they're feeling the squeeze. It is serious times. There are serious times right now in Guyana. People are feeling the squeeze. A household over $170,000, $140,000 to buy stuff for just a 5-member household. And if they're making 70,000 a month, $76,000 a month, how will these people survive? How will they survive? That's the question.
Oh, Jesus Christ. If cost of living double, I don't know what happened. A pound of sugar is $300 already. Flour, everything gone up. Everything just raising. You gotta get about $40,000 for buy good ration. You gotta get 3 man now. A weekend man, a monthly man, and a fortnight man.
Or an army. Anyway, let me not say an army. So, Mr. Granger, thank you so much as always for your time, and good to see you here in the new year as well. And let me again take the time at New Year is now starting, though, to extend again a prosperous 2024 to you and your entire family. Give my warmest regards to the head of the household.
Thank you. Will do. And my regards to the whole team at 107.1 FM and your family.
Thank you so much. The co-head of the household. Sorry about that. Don't want to get into any problems. Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate it.
Jata sky for fetchy load. Cockle shy hand, bag over shoulder, running by his side, a Red Sea and Rover. From the farm, them a come. So now go down, but up the river. Some washing clothes, some folks